to order the December 10, 2013 meeting of the Oshkosh Common Council. I want to welcome those of you who are here in the council chamber tonight. I also want to welcome those who might be watching on Channel 10, those who might be watching on their computers, those who might be listening to us on the computers, and those who might be listening to us on the radio. This is your city government. We do want you to participate in any way that works for you. So again, thanks for your attendance here. Thanks for viewing. Okay, I'm going to ask the clerk to take the roll call of the council members.
Herman.
Here.
Clark.
Here.
Fitzgerald.
Here.
Cummings.
Here.
Ellison Osby. Here. Peck.
Here.
Tower.
Here.
Present 7.
Yeah, I'm going to ask that all rise. We'll have the invocation led by Council Member Herman, and then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance led by our students who are here with us this evening.
As we gather tonight, we are grateful for the good things that have come to this city. May our decisions always be one that are for the well-being of all whom we govern. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ask our students to stay here. Oh, they already are. They've already turned around. They remember well. They remember well.
Watching the city council.
We do want to thank you for coming and helping us out tonight. We very much appreciate it. Taking time out of your schedules, come down, spend a little time with us, and help us with the pledge tonight. What we'd like to do is learn a little bit about you. So I'm going to pass the microphone down. I'd like to ask each one of you to speak into the microphone, directly into it, and basically tell us what your name is, where you go to school, what grade you're in. And we're here at the holiday time of the year, so if you or your family happen to have any special traditions with respect to the holidays that you celebrate, maybe you could share those with us.
Hi, I'm Bree Gothier. I go to Carl Traeger Middle School. I'm in 7th grade, and for the holidays, we usually go to my grandmother's house.
Hi, I am Natalie Jo Hanknet, and I am in 5th grade, and I go to Carl Traeger Elementary School. And me and my family, we have the Elf on the Shelf tradition.
Hi, I'm Grace Vandenhavel. I'm in 7th grade at Carl Traeger Middle School, and we usually stay at my house for Christmas.
Hi, my name is Meredith Weston. I'm in 4th grade at Carl Traeger Elementary School, and for the holidays, we like to go to church at Christmas Eve.
Again, we thank you for this evening. Thanks for sharing some information. I want to give each one of you a certificate, sort of a remembrance of tonight, so I'll pass those out. I ask you folks to give them a little applause. They did a great job. And now, as I promised them and their parents, they're welcome to take off and go home and do whatever. Go home and do homework, I assume, or do whatever. Thanks again. Okay, the first item of business tonight is a public hearing. We will not be voting on this particular public hearing tonight. I do need to read this 3 times. If you would like to speak to the public hearing, you can feel free to come up to the microphone and you can talk about it. This will be brought up again at the next council meeting, at which time the council will vote on it, but it needs readings at 2 different council meetings. So I'm now going to read through it 3 times. Ordinance 13-540, approve rezoning block bounded by Witzel Avenue, Sawyer Street, Southland Avenue, Jocelyn Street, excluding 230 North Sawyer from R1 single family, R3 multiple dwelling, and C2 general commercial to C1 neighborhood commercial with a planned development overlay. Second reading, ordinance 13-540, approve rezoning block bounded by Witzel Avenue, Sawyer Street, Southland Avenue, Jocelyn Street, excluding 230 Sawyer, North Sawyer, from R1 single family, R3 multiple dwelling, and C2 general commercial to C1 neighborhood commercial with a planned development overlay. Third and final reading for tonight, ordinance 13-540, approve rezoning block bounded by Witzel Avenue, Sawyer Street, Southland Avenue, Jocelyn Street, excluding 230 North Sawyer, from R1 single family, R3 multiple dwelling, and C2 general commercial to C1 neighborhood commercial with a planned development overlay. I see no one coming forward, so we'll move on in the agenda. The next item on the agenda is citizen statements to the council. This is a time when if you have comments you would like to make about the city in any way, shape, or form, positive or negative, maybe some concerns you may have, you can feel free to come up to the microphone. If you do so, we ask a number of things. One is that you give us your name and address. Limit your comments to no more than 5 minutes. When you come up, speak directly to the council. There's to be no electioneering, and this is not the time to talk about anything on the agenda tonight. Those items will be, you'll have an opportunity when those items are brought up. So anybody like to come forward at this point in time? Okay, I'll move to the next part of the agenda, which is the consent agenda items. These are items which are viewed as being non-controversial in nature, and as such, they're put together and they'll be looked at as a total package by the council unless either a citizen or a council member pulls one of the items from the agenda. If that item is pulled from the agenda, we will take it up separately. Otherwise, the items will be taken up as a group. What I'm going to do is read through these items. If you'd like to speak to one of these items at the time that I read it, please come up to the microphone at the time I read it. If not, what will happen is I'll bring it back to the council for our role in asking questions and then finally taking it to a vote. Okay, reading through it. Approval of bills presented by the Finance Director. Receipt and filing of Common Council minutes from November 26, 2013 and December 3, 2013. I will note that on November 26, 2013, there was one correction made on a motion and a word was changed in it from, I think, from add to deduct. Add to deduct. Resolution 13-541, authorized submittal of EPA Brownfields Assessment Grant for Petroleum and Hazardous Substance Grant to be used in designated redevelopment areas and scattered sites throughout the community. Resolution 13-542, authorized submittal of EPA Brownfields Revolving Loan Fund Grant. Resolution 13-543, set public hearing date to vacate portion of 1800 block of Oshkosh Ave. Resolution 13-544, approve purchase through State of Wisconsin cooperative contract for cardiac monitors, defibrillators for fire department to Physio Control, Inc. Resolution 13-545, award bid for contract number 13-17, Riverside Park parking lot reconstruction, Vinton Construction Company. Resolution 13-546, award bid for chemical. I'm sorry. Excuse me.
The 13-545, I got a question. Whereabouts are you putting this parking lot? Are you going to put a parking lot back where you took the parking lot and gave it from the parkland to the university, or what are you doing?
This is over by the convention center. It's resurfacing.
Over by the convention center?
Yes.
This is Riverside Park.
Okay. I didn't know which park you were talking about.
Again, Mr. Pitts, would you give us your name and address?
Bernie Pitts, 617 West Irving.
Okay.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question okay at this point? Okay. Resolution 13-546, award bid for chemicals for water filtration and wastewater treatment plants for 2014. Resolution 13-547, approve assignment of amended development agreement for Stony Beach West subdivision to CR Property Solutions, LLC. Resolution 13-548, approve amendment to the amended development agreement for Stony Beach West subdivision. Resolution 13-549, approval of engineering services agreement with AECom for environmental engineering services for various 2014 paving and utility projects. Resolution 13-550, approval of engineering services agreement with MyTech Services, Inc. for sanitary sewer lateral televising well, go on to the next one. Resolution 13-551, approval of engineering services agreement with Omni Associates, Inc. for 2014 to 2017, illicit discharge detection elimination in the storm sewer system. Resolution 13-552, approve initial resolution for special assessments, utility adjustments, concrete paving, and sidewalk, Hunters Ridge, Phase 2. Resolution 13-553, accept and approve waiver of special assessment notices and hearing in connection with improvements, Hunters Ridge Phase 2. Resolution 13-554, approve developer agreement, Hunters Ridge Phase 2. Resolution 13-555, approve final resolution for special assessments, utility adjustments, concrete paving and sidewalk, Hunters Ridge Phase 2. Resolution 13-556, approve various fees for park facilities and Lakeshore Municipal Golf Course. Resolution 13-557, approve various fees for senior center programs. Resolution 13-558, approve various fees for solid waste disposal. Resolution 13-559, approve various fees for Inspection Service Division. Resolution 13-560, establish assessor fees for new construction and new partials. Resolution 13-561, approve application for Fire Act grant. Resolution 13-562, accept donation of Lucas Hart compression device from Altrusa. Resolution 13-563, approve contract extension for ambulance billing with LifeQuest Services. Resolution 13-564, approve 2014 across-the-board market increase for regular non-represented employees. Resolution 13-565, approve election inspectors. Resolution 13-566, approve combination Class B license, operator, taxi cab driver, and second-hand dealer licenses. I see no one coming forward to discuss any of these items. I will bring them back to the council for questions and identification of any particular items that council members would like removed from the consent agenda. Yes, Mr. Cummings.
Thank you, Mayor Tower. This is kind of a general comment, and I'll do the three 13-557, 13-558, 13-559, and 13-560. Looking through all the backup material, has been varying lengths of time since fees were reviewed and adjusted. I would like to propose somehow that we look at this on an annual basis. And again, it's I guess more my marketing background saying you adjust prices or fees on an annual basis if necessary. You don't wait 4 or 5 years because it does give people a bit of sticker shock. So I don't know how we do this, but let's do it annually. We don't have to adjust annually, but review them annually.
At one time, when I was on the Long-Range Planning Commission, Long-Range Planning Committee at that particular point in time, actually a schedule was to be set up. Peggy was going to set up a schedule for a regular review. They wouldn't all be done every year, but was going to say, like, divided into 3 years and review a set. So I don't know whether or not that's been followed or not. But that was the recommendation. And there was actually a format that was developed for that.
You recall correctly. With Peggy's absence, we didn't go to that schedule. There were some fees that, as part of fundraising, for example, the assessor's fee, which is a brand-new fee, that's obviously something that wouldn't be on a review basis. But in the rush to get everything done for this budget season, we didn't go through that process. But I think when we get a new finance director, that'll be something that we should be following, because there was a logic to that. The idea was that some of these fees didn't need an annual review, some do, and there was a schedule for annual review of fees, and there were others for every 2 years, and I believe there were some that were every 3 years. The utility fees were ones that were more frequently, and I think after our last experience, we understand why that needs to get done.
So, yeah, hopefully, because that was, in essence, I thought, a policy.
That was the whole purpose of it.
Mr. Herman.
Mr. Roloff, on that, are we going to be posting these fees somewhere so the citizens have an idea up front what the fees are going to be? I mean, there are obviously different ones. You know, Senior Center, I'm sure that Mr. Muller through the Parks or Mr. Zimmer put it in their newsletter, Senior Doings, but are we going to be posting any of the other fees so that the citizens up front know ahead of time what these adjustments are? I know most of them are only like $5 adjustments or $10 adjustments. There's a few I know on a couple dealing with the Inspection Service Division are a little higher, but it pertains to developers, et cetera, where they have an idea what the fees are going to be before they come in and get their applications and things like that.
Sure. We make a point of, at the point of where these fees are paid, we put up signs that we let people know. We'll have it on our website. The clerk's office will have all the fees posted once the resolutions are done. That's one of the reasons we do it through resolution, because we want to make sure that we have as much publicity as possible for that. And your point's well taken. We'll take a look at some other ideas to get the word out a little better as well.
Okay, I mean, maybe even an article at the Northwestern or something that explains why the fees were increased even, to cover, budget deficits, to some other issues, as Mr. Cummings brought up, the fact that it's been quite a few years for some of them. I think it's a good way to, again, explain our budget to our citizens. I brought that up during the budget process, so we need to tell our story better. I think this is a great opportunity, again, to do that, because for a lot of citizens, fees are just, kind of another tax is the way they look at it, and yet our expenses keep going up to deliver those services. We have to kind of recoup some of those costs and things like that. So I think it would be good that we get that out there to our citizens, and even to the different boards that might be affected, and maybe a memo to some of the different boards that some of these fees might be coming across them, so that they have a better understanding.
Sure.
Like the Planning Commission might be affected by something, traffic review. I know the Parks Board approved the park advisory ones, but I think it's good, again, to educate our boards to some of the fee increases and things and the needs to why we're doing that.
Yeah, I believe that, for example, with the Inspection Services Division, they have this advisory committee of various members of the development community, and they went through those with them, as
Okay,
I understand
good.
it.
Let's-
Get some buy-in. It's really making sure that it's reasonable.
Right.
And that it's in keeping with what other communities are doing as well.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
I have a-
Mr. Herman?
I'd like to have Mr. Battalion Chief Alstead come up for a minute, please. Thanks, Chief. This is connected to Resolution 13562. We have accepted in the past donation from the Altrusa Club, the Lucas Heart Compression Device. Could you just give another explanation of what it is and now how many do we have through the Altrusa Club?
Well, in 2010, we had engaged in fundraising. Well, we didn't. Altrusa engaged in fundraising for us on behalf of the fire department to purchase these devices. Basically, it's a machine that provides cardiac compressions mechanically. And one of the things that's been emphasized in the last few years with CPR is high-quality CPR. Basically stating compressions, basically push hard, push fast. And to do that, a machine has been found or been proven to be the most effective way of providing that. So in 2010, we started working with Altrusa Club, and they've raised money. This is actually going to be our 5th purchase. So we have 5 devices. We have 9 ambulances. Our ultimate goal is to have 1 for every ambulance. We did, however, one the city did purchase, I think it was last year, under last year's budget. And then also Town of Algoma did purchase one on behalf of the Town of Algoma for the city of Oshkosh. So currently we have one on all 3 primary ambulances. We also have one on Command 15 that responds to incidents that one of the 3 primary ambulances is not on. And so this will be the 5th. So one of our cross-staffed ambulances will have this device available to them.
Okay, very good. And then Resolution 563, just can you give us an update on the LifeQuest and the ambulance billing, where we're at?
Sure. Actually, what I did is I got, for council to take a look at, I actually have the executive summary for the last couple of years that LifeQuest provides. This is 2011. I just want to pass that down. And
LifeQuest is a company that does our billing for the ambulance service.
Ambulance billing, as you know, is pretty complicated. And one of the things that the executive summary that question always asks is about write-offs of ambulance bills. One of the things that probably is better to look at is actually amount billed and amount received for ambulance bills. One of the difficulties is that write-offs, we have a couple of write-offs that are mandatory for us. One is actually Medicare. Medicare to this date, actually prior to March of 2013, only paid about $318 for an ambulance bill for basically advanced life support, which is primarily most of our ambulance calls, about 60-some%, somewhere in that range. Don't quote me on a number there, but it's a higher percentage of our calls. So with that being said, is that anything above that, in last year, if you remember, council approved in November of 2012 to increase our rates we went from our ALS rate went from $550 to $650. So we increased our rate, which actually has a twofold issue. One with Medicare, which I'll mention here, and then in a few minutes I'll talk about how it affects the rest of the rates. So that being said, is that we almost charge double of what Medicare reimburses us for. In March of 2013, they actually reduced our Medicare reimbursement by 2%. So since that in March, we've actually seen a reduction in what Medicare pays. And Medicare actually is about, puts up about, I have to take a look here, in 2013, it actually is about 37% of our patients, which were about 1% higher than everybody else, so the average services that LifeQuest bills for. So we actually, our patient population for Medicare patients is about 37%. The other problem that we have is that private pay, our commercial insurance actually is down 4%. So people that have commercial insurance that pay bills is down 4%, and our private pay is up 6%, meaning people that don't have insurance. So you can see with that being added with what we have to write off for Medicare, that's why you see our write-offs going up. But if you look at the bottom line, the actual number that you should probably be more focused on is actually the amount of calls for service, which actually is represented, actually I should say calls for service, patients that were billed, which is at the bottom of page 4. You'll see for 2013 so far this year is 6,736 patients. And if you look back at 2012 and 2011, we're about a little over 7,000. But then you look at the first page, our service revenue, you can see from 2011 to 2012 to 2013, that number continues to increase, and more of a percentage than what the actual patients that are being billed increased. One of the things that occurred with probably some of our write-offs is that the company we had prior to that, Southwest General Services, just after LifeQuest Services took over billing for us, they went out of business. So one of the things that ambulance billing is about 6 months in arrears. And with that being said is that LifeQuest actually took on what was still hanging out there for billing, which was real difficult because they had very limited information to pass over to them, and LifeQuest did as best as they could as trying to look back at what bills needed to be collected upon. So there was a little bit of I don't know if it's 2011, 2012. Finance would probably have a better idea of that number of our write-offs that occurred for that time. But as for billing wise, if you take a look at what they've done with the actual calls that we have from 2011, 12, and now into 13, if you look at comparison of how many patients are billed and how much revenues we're receiving, that is going up in comparison to how many of the patients are going up. One thing I do caution you is that on the service revenue column, that's actually that's the revenue that the city of Oshkosh would receive. However, there is an amount that comes off of that, so that would not be the amount that you would see in the annual budget as revenues by the fire department. It's going to be a little bit less in our budget that we report, because out of that monies, and that's reported on the monthly statements, is the monies that are actually have to be refunded where insurance was billed in a good situation, car accident. A bill sent out to a private person's insurance, they pay for it, and then the auto insurance or the person that struck the person pays for it. So revenue is taken in from 2 insurance companies for one bill. Money has to be basically refunded to one of those insurance companies. So that comes out of that service revenue amount. So that if you would compare that amount to anything that's reported in our budget, our reported budget is the accurate to date, and it's going to be a little bit lesser than that amount, which those breakdowns are done on a monthly basis of the reports for us.
Any other questions? What are your thoughts about the service? We're talking about renewing a contract here. We've had some issues with a prior service provider, and so this is a second service provider, and we're talking about extending the contract.
As for the fire department, I believe it's an excellent service to work with. One of the good things about it is in Watoma, so it's only a little bit less than an hour away from here. One of the things that we had, and I seem to be the area that seems to field a lot of complaints, myself and the fire chief, from patients that may have issues or questions with bills. And one of the things that does occur is that when we did have Southwest General, a lot of people complain, why is the address to the bill for the fire department bills goes to Texas? So at least it's saying Watoma, but still saying Wisconsin. So we see that we have lesser issues with that. LifeQuest has been a great service to work with. From what I can see, we have very little complaints, if any at all, from our patients that when they do contact them. For us working with them, getting information, it's been really good for us. For the fire department side, I guess I can't comment on finance's behalf because actually it's kind of a shared service. We provide the information from patient care for them to create the bill or process the bill, and then finance, works with the write-offs and the revenues and everything in return. I know that when Peggy was still here, we had some issues at the beginning with some of the reports, just getting more in a format that was understandable on her behalf, and that was something that they worked with in creating reports that gave us the information that we were necessary or needed from them. So I guess if you're asking for my opinion, I would say to continue on because it would be kind of difficult to try to find another billing service, excuse me, at this time of the game. So,
Other comments?
On that note, Mr. Roloff, anything coming out of your office or out of the finance office?
No, we've been satisfied with LifeQuest. The real challenge was what they took over from SGS, because what SGS gave to LifeQuest was pretty messy, and they took care of it. It took a while to get it all worked through, but we ultimately got it through, and they seem to be doing well. The Medicaid write-offs, Medicare, Medicaid write-offs seem to be the biggest challenge that we're having these days, but that would happen with any of the services that do this for us.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Cummings.
Mayor
Thank you very much.
Two questions. The first is 13-556, and this goes back to our budget sessions. We had talked about reviewing or considering fees for when an entire park or a major portion is rented or used. I want to make sure that doesn't fall through the cracks, so that we will do that in the coming year.
Yeah, I think that's something that we talked about. I think when we revisit the special event policy,
Okay.
that's really what I think the issue is going to come up.
Good, thank you. And the other then is 13-558. And it's more of a clarification. We've got special collection violation, move in, move out. I assume that implies more the university area?
Yeah, we're calling it the move-in, move-out fee, but it's anybody who leaves excessive garbage. It's typically occurring during big move-in, move-out periods, which would imply the university, but is not exclusive to the university.
You see it in a lot of rental areas, too.
Yep.
And the fee is charged to the owner of the property, correct? Not the tenant?
That's correct.
All right. And if the fee is not paid, does it wind up in the tax bill?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I have one. I'd like to pull 13-564 for a separate vote.
Okay. Any other? Anybody else have any questions, comments, or anything they want to pull? Okay, I will ask for a motion and a second on the consent agenda minus 13-564.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion at this point? Now, ask clerk take a roll call vote on the consent agenda minus 13-564.
Herman.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Ellison Osby. Aye. Peck.
Aye.
Tower.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Okay, that takes us down to items removed from the consent agenda. There was one, 13-564, was removed from the consent agenda. That has to do with approved 2014 across-the-board market increase for regular, non-represented employees. Look for a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion.
I'd like to make, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make an amendment to Resolution -13-564 at effective date January 2014. The percentage increase would go to 2% versus 1% across the board.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second for the amendment, essentially changing from 1% to 2% across the board. Just a little clarification there for those who haven't been or those who might have been involved in the budget discussions and at the votes last week and the amendments last week. This is really, what's really going on here is a request to reconsider a motion made by Mr. Fitzgerald in which he basically indicated that the $150,000 pay for performance would be folded into the recommended 2.5% increase, and thus there'd be a $150,000 savings in the budget. This, in essence, is replacing that with another amendment which was on the list, which was never made, and that was to a second separate independent amendment, which is to replace that amendment simply to reduce from 2.5% to 2%. So these things were on the amendments, and if you watch the earlier discussion. So with that amendment and that background, if anybody would like to speak to this, the microphone is open. Okay, we'll bring it back to council for consideration. Comments?
I'll just make a couple comments, if you don't mind. I think there was a little bit of misunderstanding exactly to what, and that could have been my fault, but I was under the impression that when we rolled these two together, that it was basically that the base increase was going to be 2%, and that we were going to stay with the $150,000 pay for performance, which would, obviously, based on what the evaluations that our employees got, not all of them are going to get a pay for performance. Some will get some pay for performance, some will not. I know that there was some discussion about how many employees would be eligible for step increases and there was a concern that some of the employees would be getting, heftier pay raises. But from what I'm being told from personnel in HR, I don't see that happening. We have a roughly 39 employees who cannot receive step increases. They're at their spot, from what I've been told. We have about 88 employees out of 320. We're talking about 320 employees that are being affected by this 2% increase. And about 88 of them are eligible for step increases. But those aren't guaranteed step increases. They have to have successful evaluations. In the old days, in the old contracts, 0 to 6 months in a job, you get a pay raise. 6 months, a year and a half, you might have got a pay raise. Automatic. None of this is guaranteed other than this pay raise right here. And I just think with the requesting our employees to pay more for health insurance, more towards their Wisconsin retirement, they went several years without a pay raise at all. I just think not all the information quite got out there last week in the discussion. There was a lot that got discussed last week, and I'll be honest, I missed it, and that's why I'm bringing it back for reconsideration and making it a 2% across the board pay raise for all non-represented employees, regular employees, I should say.
Other comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I guess when I made the motion during the budget hearings 2 weeks ago, I'll admit I was surprised that it was a 7-0 vote, and I kind of after there was no other discussion from the council, I was kind of looking for a bit of support or a bit of debate on the matter. In some respects, I kind of felt like the bad guy up there taking away the proposed pay cut and not hearing any other comments from council members. If there was some confusion about how that was presented, I apologize, but I guess it was what I intended, and it was based on a suggestion that the mayor had made at one of the workshops that it's an overall 2.5% pay increase. That's the 1% across the board coupled with the pay per performance. And I made some comments at the last meeting just about the transition to eventual transition or a transition to a merit-based compensation increase with non-represented employees in the city. I understand that, again, the employees are working hard for the city. It does amount to an additional I guess would it be fair to say $108,000 that we haven't budgeted for with this budget. So I unfortunately at this point I can't stand by it.
No. Let's see other comments. I'm going to make some comments on this because I am kind of concerned about this for a number of reasons. I'm going to oppose it. First of all, the timing of it. I would have been fine with this motion if we had it last time and had a discussion about it. But the timing is bad because if we had discussed it last week and we'd come up, this was the final decision, that would have gotten, there would have been a revenue offset, which it would have gone into the tax levy. Tax levy would have exceeded 4%. if that had been done. But that's where the revenue would have come from. By waiting now and making the change at this point in time, we're actually adding $100,000 to the budget. So I'm assuming that there's going to be some sort of a follow-up motion which will identify where the $100,000 will come from, or some sort of an identification. Because for $100,000, there ought to be some discussion out there about that particular thing. So the timing, last time it would have been fine. Waiting until now, it creates some issues. There is no revenue offset, which I'll return to later. The rationale, I thought it was pretty well explained. This was explained at the workshop. With our last workshop, I had asked to avoid this kind of any misunderstandings. I had asked for a special workshop. We had a special workshop in which we went over the amendments. Mr. Fitzgerald had made one suggestion as a possible amendment to reduce it from 2.5 to 2. I said that another alternative would be to fold the pay for performance in, and would save $150,000 rather than the $54,000. So it was discussed then. When Mr. Roloff sent all of us a set of proposals. In fact, he actually had a memo attached to it, which he indicated that all of them were independent except for these, and you could only pick one or the other. Then when Mr. Fitzgerald indicated last week, I followed up with it and said at the meeting, and went back to the tape and said that I confused people. I don't want people to be confused when we get to these things, that this would mean a 1%. So I'm a little surprised that evidently some people have indicated they thought it was 2%. The 2% was never mentioned. The other thing is that the amendment as made would have saved $150,000 from the budget. Going this way, we're going to end up adding another $100,000 to the budget. That's of some concern. That should have been of some discussion, but I fail to understand the confusion, and that's of concern when we have a budget item that's at $150,000. That there's confusion when we talked about it. Obviously, the $100,000 is an issue. Then the substantive issue with respect to having it be 2%. It does put us in a deficit position immediately for the coming year, unless the money's found somewhere else or something else is deducted. Got to come up with the money somewhere. We had a balanced budget with revenues coming. It'll also add, and a concern over the long run is structurally it'll add to the budget over time. In essence, it's just not another $100,000 addition. It's a kind of an annuity, $100,000 a year out there with an escalator clause attached to it on annual pay increases. So it's a fairly significant sum of money. It will, as I've indicated before, the concern with personnel costs being an increasing proportion of the total budget, so less money made available for other things like street lights and things like that. It means we're going to have less money available for other things unless we continue to increase the taxes, which is always an issue out there. I, too, believe in rewarding employees. I think with the 1% there would be a rewarding of employees. It was tough, and we came out of 2010, but the council last year put $200,000 out there for employees. $100,000, which was going to go for pay for performance, didn't get allocated for pay for performance, but was distributed in essence as payments. I don't know what the exact amount was to each employee, but it was probably in the vicinity, given it was $200,000 set aside, $150,000 went into that, so it was probably somewhere about a 1% payoff. Of the other $50,000 went to the fire department to take care of a compression problem. So we did put money into salaries a year ago. If we look at the elements, I was concerned about what Mr. Fitzgerald was the other day. In our salaries, what we have that's different than most other places outside is that we have steps, and the steps are fairly significant. They represent like 2.5% increases. So when we have it across the board, it's the across the board plus the steps plus the pay for performance, plus when we look at our total compensation, it's about another 20% of our money we're putting into employee health insurance, because we pay a significant share of the health insurance. They went up 20%. So if you were to go at 2% plus pay for performance, with pay for performance will, depending on employee's salary, be up to about another 2% plus a step. If they get a step, that's another 2.5%. So you're up over 6%. You're going to get some employees who might only, as was pointed out, might only get 1%, but you're going to have some employees that will be getting over 6%, which I don't think is consistent with what's going on in the private sector. If you fold all these together, the total increase in compensation is going to exceed 3%. It's going to be between 3 and 4% increase in total compensation, which we try to look at the private sector also. So I thought the 1% made sense. I agree. We do want to reward employees. We've tried it. We also want to have pay for performance to be a significant factor when we do reward employees. So for those reasons, I will vote against it, again, because of the timing, because the rationale not being focused on an important issue I'm not happy with, and for the substantive reasons. So I'll vote no on the amendment. Any other comments?
Yeah, I have a question. Mr. Fitzpatrick could come forward. No, I don't want to get into a workshop tonight, but would you briefly, 2 years ago, or I think it was 2 years ago, maybe even 3 now, we approved a salary and compensation study. That was done by Mr. Carlson. And in that study, there was some things that council kind of, I don't want to, not take for granted, was built into the program, I guess, is the best way to explain it, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Could you just kind of, just briefly, because of this, how does this all kind of play into what Mr. Carlson said we would have to do as a council as we move forward with our salary and compensation program?
Sure. As we talked about in our workshop, and I know not everybody had an opportunity to see that, our pay plan is one that's known in the marketplace as a hybrid pay plan. It retains the elements of steps that was familiar in the public sector in the past, but it also has a component that's pay for performance. And so there's really three. We use the analogy of a three-legged stool. We have steps. We have an across-the-board increase that maintains the integrity of our links to the market. And then we have what's called a pay-for-performance component. And so when we talk about the structure of the pay plan, the steps were just discussed recently by Mayor Tower. The steps are a mechanism for us to hire below the market. It's a discounted hiring rate is actually what it is. So our control point is set at the market. That's 100% of the market. So our goal is to hire people below the market, and through the training that our supervisors provide over a 5-year period, they're ultimately stepped up to that market rate. So that's our goal. Can we always achieve that goal? No. If we have somebody that has more experience, they may start at step 2 or step 3. But the idea for the steps is that this is a discounted hiring rate. It's below what the market rate is for these particular classifications. So that's the idea behind the steps. The across-the-board increase is really an idea to maintain the integrity of the plan itself. If we don't maintain the integrity of the plan, then it's not linked to the market. I know that you've talked about the idea of rewarding employees for doing a good job, compensating them. That's really one element of compensation. But there's an entire other element of compensation that speaks to the idea of making sure that your pay plan is linked to the marketplace. If you don't provide across-the-board increases to maintain the structure of your pay plan, what can happen, let me just give you an example, is those people, when we're hiring people at the lower end of the market, at the discounted rate that's set at 87.5% of the market, if we don't keep pace, what can happen is those people can get hired away for a higher rate. Or it may be difficult for us to hire people at that rate because if we're not keeping pace with the market, it's really not 87.5% of the market. It could be less. It could be 80 or 70% of the market. And then that's when the integrity of the pay plan erodes. So that's the purpose of the across-the-board increase, to maintain connectivity to the market. And then the third component is pay for performance. pay for performance is a way to incentivize a performance-based culture. And that's what we're trying to do based on what the council wanted us to foray forward with our strategic plan, with our employee engagement. And we ultimately added that piece to the pay structure in order to incentivize employees to move more toward a performance-based culture. So in totality, what we have is what's called a hybrid plan. And I would characterize that as a stepping stone to a pure performance-based pay plan. There would be steps. That's the old model that we were under, where people would move through those steps based on a seniority type of system, and they could go above the market based on that system. There's our plan that's a hybrid plan, where it includes steps and a pay-for-performance component, but it's a stepping stone to a more performance-based culture. It gives us an opportunity to put performance evaluations into our organization where people may not have had those before. And it buys us a little bit of time until we can transition to a fully performance-based culture. And that kind of a pay plan I would characterize would be more of a broad-banded system. And just to give you an idea of what's going on in the state of Wisconsin right now, we were one of the first communities to implement a pay plan of this nature. But since that time, I've had some communication with Charlie Carlson, who has done a lot of new pay plans, not only for municipalities, but also for counties and school districts. And as a result of that, I think he's completed 23 pay plans. I think he's got another 15 that he's working on right now. And to give you a sense of what the landscape is now since Acts 10 and 32 and what sort of pay structures currently exist in the public sector, I think I wrote down he's got 14 that are hybrid plans like ours that are completed. There are 4 that still remained with the old step plans that didn't feel comfortable moving to where we are. And that there are 3 plans that are currently in place that are in the broadband, the more pure performance-based plan. Now, just because we're in the hybrid plan doesn't mean that we can at some point transition to that broadband plan. And when we worked on this pay study in the past, I think I shared with the council that typically I would recommend that we take a look at our pay plan every 10 years. So we've been into our pay plan now. It'll be going on at least a couple years. And that would give us some time to be able to transition to a more performance-based culture. Maybe within the next 8 years or so, we could take a look at the whole pay plan again. So that was the strategy really behind the pay plan and why it was implemented as it has been. And really, this is how I've conveyed how the pay plan works to our supervisors, and then they've communicated all this information to our employees. One other point that I think it would be helpful to share with you is the employees' understanding of the difficult financial circumstances that we're all faced with. I mean, I think they respect the role of the city council. They understand what difficult choices you have. And one of the tenets, one of the important components of this pay plan is for them to understand that in order for council members to feel comfortable providing increases in the future and also to have those supported by the public, that performance-oriented activity needs to be demonstrated. So that's the commitment that we asked them to buy into when we established the structure. And that's what I believe they are committed to. So that's the thought process, I think, on the employees' end and how it was explained to the SUPs and to those individual employees.
Thank you.
Okay, a couple of comments. None of that is even an issue here tonight, from my perspective. We've already bought into that, and we have all those elements. The issue is how much goes into each one of these components and how much goes in at a particular point in time. And I think that has to be balanced with respect to the budget. And we have to look at the budget in total when we start talking about putting money into each one of those areas. Because the difference between what we have has to do with the amount of the across the board. The steps are in there, the pay for performance. So this isn't about the structure of the budget. It's about how we're going to put money into one element. That's the first thing. The second thing is that it is about balancing the budget and balancing our interests there between personnel, non-personnel costs, and the total budget, be fair to employees. All of these elements together, even at the 1% level, which was what we voted on 7-0 the last time we voted on that, 7-0, was that the total compensation increase of employees, if you take all of these three components, plus you take the increase in health insurance that we'll be paying on behalf of employees, it's probably going to be between 3 and 4%, which is probably, I believe that would be correct. And so that's the issue here. The issue isn't the structure. We all bought into that. We created a system. We had employees involved in the pay for performance. So it's about how much money goes into it, and that's really a budget question for us, as well as trying to create fairness for the employees. So I think an overall wage increase of between 3 and 4, or overall compensation increase between 3 and 4%. The market thing, market is market. The market price out there, we don't discount what we pay for employees. We will pay them at market for the job that they do and when they're hired. That's the definition. If employee accepts it, if we make an offer, they make it, that's what the market for an entry-level employee is. The market price includes the market wage is made up of entry-level employees and experienced employees. So we do offer new employees a market rate that's at the market at the current time, because if we didn't, it wouldn't be a rational decision to come into it. So I think that has to be factored into it. The other is that you can't do all of those things. If you listen to the state right now and what's going on with state employees and others, companies weren't paying in 2008 and 2009 the old kinds of market rates that were out there. The state says they're 18% below the market or whatever. But they have budget concerns too. So this is budget related. I'm also concerned, as I say, about the timing of this. This discussion should have taken place last week, and I tried to lay it out there in such a way. I thought it was pretty clear. So again, I think the 1%, the way it was done last night, was appropriate, is rewarding our employees, and is consistent with everything Charlie asked for. Consistent with everything Charlie asked for. So those are my thoughts. No, any other comments? Or? Yes, if not, we'll take a roll call vote. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I guess my feedback on that is, I will take responsibility for myself. Unfortunately, I am not a perfect individual, nor do I think anybody is on the council. We certainly have had our share of challenges to get through with the budget, and I think when I came out of the very last workshop, my full intent was a 2% across the board raise. I also got the impression that that was the majority. If for some reason it slipped by me, I rewatched that session 3 times, and I don't know. I honestly don't know, other than I could tell we were all busy calculating numbers. I heard Sean say 2.5%. I heard him say 2%. I really honestly believed that he was talking about the initial proposal from staff, which was a 2.5% across the board, to a 2%. And quite frankly, it sickens me that at the time I didn't ask the question. Had I had asked the right question, perhaps that would have prompted a discussion, at least on my part, between myself and Mr. Fitzgerald. But it didn't. We have I don't know what city manager roll off. We have a $64 million operating budget, $62 million.
It was 67.
67. This is unfortunate that we have $100,000 going into it. However, $100,000 out of $67 million, I have confidence that if this is a direction we want to go, staff will figure out a way to prioritize in order to be able to do it. 2 years ago, we adopted this plan. Those of us that were on council all voted in favor of it. I never thought it was going to come for free. I thought there would certainly have to be adjustments. To the mayor's point, I understand wages will continually be a concern, as they are for the school district and a number of other organizations. But that also goes back to how do we increase our cash flow in our operating budget. You can cover those things when you take a look at long-term debt, reducing that and what we pay out. We pay out, $5-7 million in principal and interest. A little trim there over a short period of time would certainly free up what we're going to experience as far as wage increases or things like health insurance. And it's a continual thing. We're not going to fix it, and that's going to be our job of our council as we move forward and other councils to have to be able to deal with that. That was one of the reasons why 2 years ago, it'll be 2 years, January and February, that we talked about economic development. We needed to figure out ways because we knew the challenges were not going to stop. So again, my sincere apologies for putting staff certainly in the predicament of having to come up with an additional, $100,000. My sincere apologies to Mr. Fitzgerald for not understanding what it exactly was that he was proposing and how it got by me. But it is what it is, and I will support this amendment.
Other comments?
We last week dealt with 8 rather substantive changes to our budget that we had proposed originally. Well, we're talking about a large number of percentages here. This approximately $100,000 would represent 1/10 of 1% of our total operating budget. I have confidence that the 7 of us, with the help of staff, can find this money somewhere on the expenditure side to allow our employees this 2%. And I apologize as well for missing this last week. The nearest thing I can guess is when rewatching that tape from last week, watching that meeting several times, watching that section of the meeting, I was looking down an awful lot, so my guess is I was probably calculating our running tally at the time. So I apologize to Mr. Fitzgerald. I apologize to the rest of the members of this council and to our citizens for missing this last week. But I thank Mr. Herman for bringing this back for us because we need to make the right decision, and having the discussion now is better than not having it at all.
Okay, any other comments?
I would echo the comments of Ms. Osby, Allison Osby, and Mr. Clark as well. I mean, I missed this, and I kick myself for missing this. I try to be as open and honest and understand everything, but sometimes when things start flying around and you hear 2% and then 2.5%, and then as Mr. Clark indicated, yes, I went back and looked at the tape, and we're all trying to figure out where we're at, and you're concerned with a $67 million budget, and you're trying to piece it all together. Maybe what I'm going to have to do in the future is kind of do what we do in hockey. We carry something that's called a riot book when we referee, and when things get hot and heavy, you pull the riot book out, you step back for a minute and go, okay, let's see, I got number 27 for this, and I got this for this, and you kind of step back and call a timeout. And I take full responsibility for my actions in missing this, and I think that, as indicated, we can reward our employees for the vital job that they provide to our citizens, and we will figure a way to get this money taken care of.
Other comments? Yes, the only, just the final comment. I believe in rewarding the people. It's always a question of balance out there. If that's the will, that's fine, but I am disappointed because we argued over $20,000. We didn't say, find $20,000, we can easily do that, because that's even 1/5 of $100,000. So we're taking pretty seriously $20,000, $50,000, and $40,000. So and we did try to lay it out there carefully. But with that, we'll take the vote.
Herman?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Fitzgerald?
No.
Cummings?
Aye.
Allison Osby?
Aye.
Peck?
Aye.
Tower?
No.
Carried 5-2.
Okay, that takes us to the next item on our agenda, which is pending
Mayor.
ordinance.
That was the motion on the amendment, correct?
Oh,
We have to
sorry.
on the actual
That was on
motion.
the amendment.
I would move the
Been moved.
Okay. We now have an amended motion out there. Any comments on the amended motion? Okay, now we'll take the vote on the amended motion.
Herman?
Essentially changing it from 1% to 2%.
Herman?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Fitzgerald?
No.
Cummings?
Aye.
Allison Osby?
Aye.
Peck?
Aye.
Tower.
No.
Carried 5-2.
Okay, pending ordinances. Ordinance 13-567, approval of changes in permit parking in CP Avenue lot. Anybody like to come forward to speak to that? This is the second reading. I see no one come forward. Bring it back to the council. Ask for a motion, a second, on ordinance 13-567.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Just one comment. I sit on the board for this. In a sense, it came up on the parking utility and the traffic review. I know Ms. Osby sits on the parking utility, but we supported it. This just brings us in line with all our other parking lots. They were kind of jumbled around, and we made a few changes, and so both boards voted in favor of this so that we have consistency for our citizens throughout all our parking lots in the downtown area. So I'll be voting in favor of it.
Okay. Any other comments? Ask clerk to take the roll call vote on ordinance 13-567.
Herman.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Peck.
Aye.
Tower.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Takes us to ordinance 13-568, approval of loading zone definition and parking regulation changes on Bed Avenue, Eagle Street, Liberty Street, North Main Street, and 7th Avenue. Anybody like to come forward to speak to that? Seeing no one come forward, to bring it back to the council for a motion and second.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, ask clerk to take the roll call vote on ordinance 13-568.
Herman.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Allison Osby. Aye. Peck.
Aye.
Tower.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Takes us to ordinance 13-569, approval of Chapter 27 revisions with respect to parking meters, pay stations, permit parking, and lease parking. Would you like to come forward to speak to that? See no one come forward? I'll ask for a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, ask clerk to take the roll call vote on ordinance 13-569.
Herman.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Peck.
Aye.
Tower.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Ordinance 13-570, authorized property record maintenance fee, and to repeal Section 2-30D to remove Assessment Division from Department of Finance, create Section 235C to reassign the Assessor Division under Community Development. If I'd like to speak to that, please come forward. See no one come forward, bring it back to the council for a motion and second on ordinance 13-570.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask clerk to take the roll call vote on ordinance 13-570.
Herman.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Peck.
Aye.
Tower.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Okay, that takes us to new ordinances. These are ordinances which we will actually be voting on tonight. So as I read each one, if you'd like to come forward and speak to it, please do so, and then we'll bring it back to council for a motion and second. Ordinance 13-571, approval of building, electrical, and plumbing code changes to include fees and fee schedule. Anybody like to speak to that? See no one come forward, I'll bring it back to the council for a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and
Do we
second.
need to have a motion formally to suspend the rules on all of these individually, or can we do it collectively?
Individually, I would prefer.
Okay. I move that to suspend the rules for ordinance 13-571 to allow adoption on the first reading.
Second.
This is already here for the first.
These 4 items were items that were approved by the council as part of the budget. In order for us to implement them on January 1, we're requesting, and because we don't have a second meeting in December because of Christmas Eve, we're asking that the council waive
Okay, this
all
didn't-
items.
Okay, this didn't have these didn't have asterisks by them.
No, we just note unless council, we've worded it so that unless council formally waives.
Right, so.
So we're asking, and so we have the note there, staff recommends waiving the rules and adopting on first reading.
Okay. All right, so we had a motion and a second to waive the rules. I'll ask if anybody would like to speak to that motion. Please come forward. Okay, I didn't read that part. Okay, come back to council. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, take a vote on waiving the rules.
Herman?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Cummings?
Aye.
Allison Osby?
Aye.
Pack?
Aye.
Tower?
Aye.
Carried 7.
It takes us to ordinance 13-572, amend solid waste disposal ordinance
No.
for special.
Nope, we're on, now we have the motion as standing on the ordinance itself.
Okay, correct.
To motion.
That's where I need help. Okay,
We all need it.
on me.
I may have a little training in this.
I make a motion.
It's already been moved.
No, it has
It's been
not.
moved and seconded.
No, it has not.
Okay.
We need a motion and a second. I have Allison Osby.
Second.
Okay.
Actually, I moved it and seconded it before we did it, and then the waiving of the
Oh, I didn't
rules
hear it.
came up.
Okay,
so-
sorry.
Okay, so we waived the rules, we got a new motion and a second, so we're all
Yes.
set now?
We are.
We are set.
We are set. Any further discussion? And actually, we will be voting on the motion itself at this point in time. We all okay? Okay, let's clerk take the roll call vote on ordinance 13-571.
Herman?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Cummings?
Aye.
Allison Osby?
Aye.
Pack?
Aye.
Tower?
Aye.
Carried 7.
Okay, that takes us to ordinance 13-572, amend solid waste disposal ordinance for special prepaid pickup to include fees with fee schedule.
I
Anybody
move,
like to come forward, speak to that? Seeing that, we'll come back.
I move to suspend the rules to allow for the adoption of ordinance 13-572 on the first reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Anybody like to come forward to speak to it? Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll take the roll call vote on the motion to suspend the rules for ordinance 13-572.
Herman?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Cummings?
Aye.
Allison Osby?
Aye.
Pack?
Aye.
Tower?
Aye.
Carried 7.
Okay, so now we need the motion and second on ordinance 13-572.
So moved.
Second.
We'll get this down. Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, take the roll call vote on ordinance 13-572.
Herman?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Cummings?
Aye.
Allison Osby?
Aye.
Pack?
Aye.
Tower?
Aye.
Carried 7.
Okay, that takes us to ordinance 13-573, approve boat launch user fees. Anybody like to come forward to speak to that? Seeing no one come forward, we'll bring it back to council.
So moved.
No.
No. I move to allow suspending the rules and adopting on the first reading of ordinance 13-573.
Second.
Any discussion on that? Seeing none, take the roll call vote on suspending the rules to adopt ordinance 13-573.
Herman?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Cummings?
Aye.
Allison Osby?
Aye.
Pack?
Aye.
Tower?
Aye.
Carried 7.
Okay, the rules have been suspended. Now, I'd ask for a motion on ordinance 13-573.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I'd like Mr. Muller to come up for a minute, please.
Didn't mean for any confusion.
Thank you, Mr. Muller.
Yep.
We're raising the boat launch fees basically from $3 to $5 for the daily pass, and we're increasing the fees for the permit. Are these in line with the rest of the municipalities that use the Lake Winnebago system?
Yes, we did, staff did a survey of communities not only on nearby Appleton, Neenah, Menasha, New London, Brown County, Winnebago County. We are consistent at this point if they are approved with Winnebago County fees that they currently charge. So yes, we did look at all surrounding communities.
And per our ordinance, the money that is collected for boat launch fees has to be used for boat launch improvements?
Correct. They stay in a segregated fund strictly for boat launch maintenance and improvements.
And we have money in the next year's budget to do some of that type of work on the fees from this last year?
Yes, we have, we're looking at design services for Rainbow Park for improvements to the launch area and traffic flow in the future down there. Also, our comprehensive plan looks at the docks and so forth at 24th, Mill Street, Menominee Park, all the other boat launches. So, yes, it is a way to help fund some of those improvements.
Okay. And when we have these big fishing tournaments, do these fees apply per boat, or can they buy out a boat launch, or how does that work when we get these big fishing tournaments and we close the boat landings to our citizens because of the fishing tournament?
They have the option if there's, it's a part of the ordinance, I have to look, if it's over 200 or over, I think it's over 200 boats, they can pay a launch fee of $250 to rent out that launch specifically. We keep our rangers out of there. But otherwise, if they do not have that many boats or don't choose that option, then each individual boat does pay the daily fee.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Take the roll call vote now on ordinance 13-573.
Herman.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Peck.
Aye.
Tower.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Okay, that takes us to ordinance 13-574, establish street grades, Hunters Ridge Phase 2, Whitetail Lane, Elk Ridge Drive, Rufford Grouse Way. Anybody like to come forward to speak to that? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council.
I move to suspend the rules to allow adoption on the first reading of ordinance 13-574.
Second.
Okay. Anybody like to speak to that? Seeing none, bring it back to council. Any comments on waiving the rules? Seeing none, take the roll call vote on waiving the rules for ordinance 13-574.
Herman.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Peck.
Aye.
Tower.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Okay, we've waived the rules. Now look for a motion on ordinance 13-574.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any comments on ordinance 13-574? Seeing none, ask clerk to take the roll call vote on ordinance 13-574.
Herman.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Peck.
Aye.
Tower.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Okay. We'll move to new resolutions. Thanks, Mr. Clerk, for your help on that one.
Absolutely.
Getting us through that. Appreciate it. And thanks to the clerk also. New resolutions. Resolution 13-575, accept Winnebago County per capita funding for economic development and authorize payment of funds to Champco to support its economic development efforts on behalf of the city and approve agreement with Champco for 2014 economic development services. Anybody like to come forward to speak to that?
Elizabeth Hartman from Champco, 43 East 7th Avenue. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to present some information to you. I'm here in support of Resolution 13-575, which includes in it Champco's annual request for historical funding from the city, which we have received since 1975. And also included this year is a special request for some additional funding to support some particular initiatives that both the city and Champco are engaged in relative to economic development. And first, I'd like to just provide some general background on Champco.
Let me make a quick comment.
Yeah, you bet.
We basically have asked for this information, so the 5-minute limit will not apply.
Okay,
Basically,
perfect.
information
That's
is
great.
5 minutes.
Because I know I'll
We'd like you
exceed
to
5
move through
minutes.
it efficiently, but
I will.
But given what I asked for
Okay.
originally, aye.
Sounds good. But I would like to take a minute to just talk a little bit about Champco and our activities, but focusing on, what we did in 2013 and what we plan to do in 2014. And you received a cover memo and a proposal talking in particular about the things that we're going to do, and I'd be happy to discuss those specifically and answer any questions that you do have. I do have just a few slides on a PowerPoint, which hopefully will work. Champco's been around since 1960. We've been serving the community, doing economic development for over 50 years. And we are an independent, private, not-for-profit organization. We have a mission to advance industry and economic development in the Oshkosh area. We are truly a public-private partnership. We receive funding from and have a cooperative relationship with both the government and the private business community. Our goal is very simple. It's for more businesses to start here, to come here, expand here, and grow here. And so who is Chamco? We are an organization that has a very large board of directors and a very small staff, and we get an awful lot done with that arrangement. We have lots of representatives on our board of directors from all across the community. We've got government folks, we've got economic development folks, we've got industry folks. Education is represented. The mayor, the city manager, the director of community development all sit on the Chamco board of directors. Our staff is small. It's myself and VP of Development Services. I am an attorney with a background in business and real estate, and my associate was a commercial broker for many years. So we do have a very heavy real estate expertise and concentration. Our customers are businesses, businesses that are already here in the community, new businesses that are looking to start, businesses that we want to bring here to the community that are looking at new ventures, are looking to expand. They need capital, they need training, they need machinery or equipment. Those are our bread and butter folks that we're working with on a day-to-day basis. But our other customers really are our partners in economic development who rely on us for help and assistance, including the city, the Chamber of Commerce, are our partners in economic development. And of course, our real ultimate customer is the same as yours, the Oshkosh area residents and businesses who expect our community to be a great place to live and to work and to do business. Our focus is economic development through industrial expansion. We have always been focused since day one on industrial development. And that includes the industrial parks. You know, we've worked with the city since our inception on the development of the now 5 industrial parks that we have in our area. Retention, expansion, recruitment of industry, the bread and butter of economic development, as well as entrepreneurial support, supporting the entrepreneurs in our midst, growing those companies here. And undertaking and supporting initiatives that help enhance economic development. As you recall from the Prager study, this is what they talked about: location capacity building, doing those things that have the long-term potential to have great impact on your community, things such as the Aviation Business Park. Industrial park development, I'm not going to talk in great detail about what we do here because, as you know, we have a contract with the city which will be coming up for renewal, and that will be a subject of a future meeting. But we are the city's agent for the parks, and really we provide a dual role. We are a broker that markets and sells land, but we're also the property manager of the parks, if you will. We do covenant review, we grant variances, we enforce the covenants, we deal with tenant relations, and provide other value-added services and special projects in the parks. I mean, you may recall we've had some issues in this last couple of years with loading and unloading by the railroad in the Southwest Industrial Park. That's a project that we've worked on very closely with the city to try to resolve. But retention, expansion, recruitment of industry, there are a lot of things that we do to help folks. Confidentiality, very important. We provide that confidential consultation and advice. We can look at a project and analyze it, help figure out where the gaps are, what resources need to be brought to the table, whether those be financial or non-financial. We do have expertise in site and building selection and real estate transactions, and we have worked for years to try to cultivate different kinds of resources to help projects get done. And we leverage those resources and the relationships that we've built. A very important thing that we do is we undertake and support initiatives that enhance economic development. We were a founding member of Angels on the Water, which is our local angel investment fund. There are only 2 angel investment funds that are operating in Northeast Wisconsin. One of them is right here in Oshkosh, and it's because of a lot of folks coming together and realizing the need for capital and putting this fund together. As you know, we've worked very closely with the city and the county on the Aviation Business Park. This has been an initiative that's been underway for many years. And finally, we now have, land purchased, and we are poised to take advantage of this great new asset that we have in our community to foster growth in aviation-related business. We're also in discussions with the university, and the city and the county are partners in this as well, about establishing a business accelerator program and facility which would be located at the new Aviation Business Park. And this program would be designed to foster growth in startup businesses, which would be in aviation as well as other industries. We have a virtual building program, which is something we developed with the city, which instead of building a true spec building, which really the market would not support at this point, we developed plans for a spec building, which has pre-approvals associated with it. So folks can get a sense for, if you come here, this is what you could build. It's already pre-approved, and we could shorten the timeline between concept and shovels in the ground, which, as we all know, time is money. The city-based revolving loan fund, this is something we've wanted in our toolbox for many years, and we're very happy to see that the city has advanced that. And of course, the Go EDC effort is something very important that we are involved in as well. Things that we did in fiscal 2013. We worked or are working with 18 different prospects on different expansion projects in our community. We assisted 12 new businesses find capital through Angels on the Water, investing over $200,000 in Northeast Wisconsin. Of course, we worked with the city and the county on the purchase of the 80 acres for the Aviation Business Park, as well as the successful application to the Economic Development Administration for $2 million to assist with the business park expansions. We also applied for the Department of Defense for an additional $350,000 to assist with planning efforts for both the Aviation Business Park as well as the Business Accelerator, and we are very hopeful that we will receive that grant shortly. We submitted 6 proposals through the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation in response to site selection requests. We did support the Prager study results, and we worked with the city to try to advance the conclusions in that report. And now the new Go EDC effort we have joined and we support. And we are always engaged in a lot of different things. I serve on the Winnebago County Industrial Development Board. We work with the Business Retention Program, Fox Valley Tech. We do our annual Economic Development Report. These are just things that we're doing on an ongoing basis. The Wisconsin Aerospace Consortium is a new effort by the state to advance aviation-related development on a statewide basis. So the efforts that we're doing here locally are very consistent with what the state sees as a priority. We also did provide support staffing to Aero Innovate during AirVenture this year. 2014, we're of course going to continue our work with our prospects. That's our bread and butter. But we are going to continue to advance those initiatives that are really important to our future, including the Business Accelerator, the Aviation Business Park. We're going to continue to work on Angels on the Water, work with the city to set up the new revolving loan fund so that folks can have access to that additional resource. We would also like to this year do a revamping of Champco's website to include, in particular, some interactive mapping features for the industrial parks with a focus on the new Aviation Business Park. And we will continue to participate in the Go EDC efforts. And just as a recap, in our 53 years, Champco has accomplished a lot. We've worked with over 500 clients on different types of projects. We worked with the city to develop and manage the 5 industrial parks. We've sold over 1,000 acres of industrial park land in that time. Advance those initiatives which have that long-term potential to really transform our economy. Incentivize development through creative programming, our spec building program, and now we've got our virtual building program. Increased access to capital through Angels on the Water, and helped our clients secure over $52 million in financial resources in our history. So again, we are asking the city for its historical investment in Champco, which is general purpose revenue in the amount of $37,500, which is the amount that we have received since 2001. And also a portion of the city's allocation of the county's per capita contribution in the amount of $28,400. That's a little less than half of what the county is allocating to the city. And then some additional funding in the amount of $39,000 and some change to support special initiatives that we're working on, including the Aviation Business Park, setting up the revolving loan fund, and the website enhancements. And I can talk in particular about any of those that you would like to. But as you know, we've spent, almost the last 2 years studying economic development and then talking about the economic development study. And, we supported those efforts, and we look forward to seeing how the Go EDC initiative takes off and what that becomes. But as of right now, we don't really know what that's going to look like. And we're engaged in some very important work and initiatives that we're asking for your support for. And we're also engaged in a private fundraising campaign. So in keeping with our public-private partnership, we're looking for some support from the city as well as support from the private business community. We do also have revenue from our own operations as well. But, this important work that we're doing has, long-term potential to really transform our economy. And as you know, if we do economic development right, so many other things are good. We have good jobs, we have increased tax base, and we have good quality of life for our citizens. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions or discuss specifics that are included in the proposal.
What I'm going to ask you to do right now is just sit right there for now. Let me get the motion, get it on the floor, and then be available, and then we'll ask questions once we get to the discussion part of it. That's okay. So don't go away. So anybody else like to speak to this? Seeing no one, I'll ask for a motion in a second on Resolution 13-575.
So moved. Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion and any questions that you may have of. Sorry, yes.
What is that, Ms. Hartman?
Come on up to the microphone
Yeah.
again.
What's the size of Chamco's budget overall?
It's just a little bit south of $300,000.
Okay.
So the increased commitment from the city this year would represent about 35% of our budget.
Okay. And I guess my question for asking that, the other sources don't rely on government funding up to a point. My concern is that if we get to a point where we're 50%
yes.
Funding, I think we could probably, Mr. Bollier and myself and Mr. Gray could probably make an argument to the state that Chamco meetings should be open for to the public and as well as all your records, and you kind of lose that opportunity of confidentiality. But that's not.
Yes.
With your other funding sources, we're not in danger of approaching that.
And we are very mindful of that. I know quite a bit about open records, and as a lawyer and doing this type of work for a long time, it's something that we do keep good track of. And this would be the only public support in our budget this year.
Other question? Jonathan Osby.
Ms. Harving, for maybe those that are watching, and maybe even for council members that may or may not be aware, could you discuss the grant that you worked cooperatively with the city and the others that were in that? Because that was quite an accomplishment. I know it really took some effort on the part of a number of people in the community, and it's probably one of my favorite accomplishments in the community as a whole when you look at all stakeholders. I just think it's kind of neat if you could educate everyone on how that came about.
Yeah, you bet. We've been engaged in this effort to develop this aviation business park for a long time, and obviously a critical piece of that is having the infrastructure associated with it. And we knew about the potential of an economic development administration application for a grant to assist us with the park infrastructure. And this really came about through discussions that we were having with East Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission, who's the liaison to the EDA, and this was one of their favorite projects in their region, and they really wanted to advance this application. So working with the city and the county as well as the university, we had a small working group that met for several months working on the application. The EDA grant applications tend to be pretty onerous, and they ask for a lot of information. You have to make a really compelling case, and we were able to do that, and there were lots of folks around the table that did a tremendous amount of work. In particular, Alan Davis from the city and Kat Alquist from the East Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. But it was really a great collaborative effort, and securing that $2 million grant really goes a long way towards getting that park infrastructure in place and having it development ready for folks who want to locate there.
Other comments, questions?
Mr. Mayor, this is a question for Mr. Roloff, but the 28,000 of the county's per capita funding, and these are funds that the city of Winneconne, city of Omro are receiving these. The towns that surround us throughout the county are receiving these as well. I don't know if any of them are also allocating theirs. They can make the decision as we do how those funds are used and how those are allocated. Why was this additional amount proposed and as opposed to going toward our economic development efforts through Community Development Office or toward contributions to the GO EDC initiative?
In 2013, when the county first increased its amount, the $28,000 figure you referred to was what used to be the entire old amount. Prior to 2013, the county was roughly 50 cents per capita that was distributed to municipalities throughout the county for whatever they wanted to use for economic development. And we had historically assigned that to CHAMCO for as long as the programs existed in our memory. When the county executive proposed increasing that amount to approximately $1, we retained that amount for 2013. CHAMCO is asking that that amount and plus a little more be assigned to them to continue some of these efforts. The real issue comes down to when is GO EDC or public-private partnership going to take off, and that's really the big question. There is a provision in this year's contract, as in addition to the proposed contract in front of you, that should any public-private partnership initiative take off, that would be really a successor agency from our standpoint, that this would be CHAMCO would be required to refund us on a pro rata share.
And I get, Mr. Davis could maybe answer this question. Mr. Roloff got close to that, I guess. In your addressing the council, you said the fundings depend on Winnebago County's per capita funding. Without the county's funding, the scope of services and fees must be modified. Do we have any idea what that modification would be? Is that?
I'm expecting them to still grant the dollar per capita, and we've made that application for that reservation, but they don't make that commitment until January or February. So if anything would change between what we promised CHAMCO now and if Winnebago County changes anything, I wanted to make sure that we weren't locked in with CHAMCO on spending money we might not end up with. So we have asked for the money, but we don't have it in the bank yet.
Okay, and then we retain roughly 44,000 of that 150 that was put into the economic development, correct?
We would have that much left in contract services for any other kind of type of economic development services that we want to.
Could apply towards CHAMCO if we needed to?
We could do that, or any other economic development activities we'd see for 2014.
For example, this year we used some of those funds for David Ward. Mm-hmm. We actually, council approved a few weeks ago that software package that was part of how the $150,000 was used. This year, 2013, about $66,000 went to CHAMCO, so roughly $94,000 or $84,000 was available for us to do other things with.
Okay, very good. I think they've done a great job for us, so I'm going to support the contract.
Mr. Cummings.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank Ms. Hartman for the work she's done with CHAMCO and for making a very enthusiastic presentation. I think it shows in where CHAMCO is heading, the work they've done. So thank you.
Any comments? Yes.
Kind of going back to our discussion before, this is one way for us to demonstrate our commitment to economic development and growing out of our budget concerns. If we can continue to grow our tax base, continue to attract new people, new businesses, and new investment in this community, we can grow out of some of our budget constraint concerns. So I'm definitely going to support this.
Any further comments? Seeing none, thank you for the presentation. I do appreciate that. I'll ask the clerk to take the roll call vote on Resolution 13-575.
Herman?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Cummings?
Aye.
Allison Osby?
Aye.
Peck?
Aye.
Tower?
Aye.
Carried 7.
Okay, that takes us to Resolution 13-576, approve settlement for land purchase from August Pitts and Sons at 702 West 3rd Avenue in the amount of $69,750 for the upgrade to the Public Works Field Operations Facility. Anybody like to speak to that?
I'm Bernie Pitts, 617 West Irving. I'd probably have to ask for a little more than 5 minutes, if that would be granted.
See how we are, Mike.
All right. First of all, I'd like to tell you our company was established in 1894, not 1994, 1894 by my grandfather August. My grandfather then took in his two sons, my father, Gilbert and Nick Pitts, as a partner in this business. And when I returned in 1962 from service, I was brought in as a junior partner and eventually bought out my uncle and my father and became a sole proprietor. I am now the sole owner of August Pitts and Sons. In 1962, not 1962, 1965, I believe it was, the university took our construction yard for the first high-rise dorm that they built, and we had to relocate. Having a hard time finding a place to relocate in the city of Oshkosh because we were required to have a place where it had heavy industrial. We finally located a place, and we settled with the state to buy our construction yard. In 1965, when we relocated there, as I said, it was heavy industrial. Now, sometime along this span, not knowing when, the city downzoned that property to M2, never notifying us ever that they did that. Now, heavy industrial zoning, as you're well aware, is worth more than M2 zoning. But now they would like to buy it as M2 zoning. Well, we also, when we bought that, had to buy the land across the street because that was what was left of the division of that land by the owner who was living in Sheboygan at the time. And if we wanted one lot, we had to buy the other also. And we agreed to do that. Now, the other lot was zoned R2, two-family. All these years, up until approximately 5 years ago, it would remain R2. Then a fellow bought the land to the east of me and wanted to put a storage building up. And he came and asked if he could rezone our property along with his. And I said only if it was rezoned the same as the construction yard, which I was not aware it had been downzoned to M2. Now, that land got zoned M2. Now, we had to look for a piece of property to move so the city could expand their facility. We had thought about building across the street on the land across the street, which is now zoned M2. But because there's a duplex down next to the armory, we would have to give up, the lot is 100 foot wide, 100 feet deep. We couldn't use the back 25 feet because it abutted residential. We couldn't use the front 25 feet because this duplex was down the street. So it left us with 100 by 150, 100 by 100 foot facility, which is far less land we now own, the land across the street. They therefore set out to try to find a piece to buy, and the city of Oshkosh hired a fellow from Green Bay that was supposed to help in locating a piece of property. Now, as of today, he has done zilch, nothing to help us locate a piece of property. I have bought a piece of property in an M3 zoning. The piece of property that I bought in the M3 zoning, in your M3 zoning, this lot that I bought goes between two streets. The lot in the back is only 44 foot wide by 135 foot. So I came to the city after I'd already put an offer in on the property and said, what can I do with that? Can I fence it? I have to fence it. I've got stuff that I don't want laying out in the open. Oh, Mr. Pitts, you have to fence it. And on my way out of the office, I was handed the M3 zoning. And the M3 zoning says you can't fence it in an M3 zoning. So I go back to the city and I said, look, what am I supposed to do? You say, I have to fence it, but the zoning says I can't fence it. So they said, well, we'll talk it over. And days went by and days went by, and nothing happened. Finally, I had an attorney call, and they said, well, we'll allow you to fence it. Now, in the M3 zoning, it requires a 150-foot wide lot. And it requires you to stay 20 feet away from the sideline, 35 feet away from the front, and 30 feet from the back. It left us an area of 4 foot by 80 foot of a lot we could use. I don't know whoever put this kind of zoning in that could be a possibility of a lot that you can only use an area of 40 by 80 foot of a lot. But anyway, we continued on.
Okay.
We
Give you a little bit
continued.
of extra time, give you a
Okay.
couple of more minutes, and see if you
Okay.
can focus on the
Yes.
settlement for or against it.
We continued on, and we purchased this piece of property. The city's representative has only talked to me personally twice on the phone, and I met with him for about 10 minutes on the site. That's 8 or 9 months ago, that he was going to come and bring somebody down to come up with a price to move the stuff out of the property. On December 3rd, he called and left it on my recorder that he was standing outside the gate on 3rd Street, that he would like to get in the property. I got home at 6 o'clock that night, December 3rd. He gave no pre-warning or nothing that he was coming. Now he's called today and left it on. That was left on my home recorder, by the way, not my business recorder. Today he called and left it on the recorder that he would like to be there at 9 o'clock on Thursday. In the meantime, we went out and got a price to move the stuff. And now, after 8 months, the city wants to start all over and put us through some more attorney fees. We're already at the attorney fees of approximately $12,000 on this foolishness. Now, when the city originally came about wanting to talk about Pine, weren't sure if they were going to go there. They were talking actually going to the industrial park. They handed us this book. In fact, they handed us 2 books. And it says procedures under Section 3206, Wisconsin statutes. On litigation expense, I'll read this to you. The sum of the costs, disbursements, and expenses, including reasonable attorney and appraisals, engineering fees necessary to prepare for or participate in actual or anticipated proceedings before a condemnation commission or any court. Now the city doesn't want to pay the attorney fees. Now, just how much do people expect a resident of this city, a company that's been in this city for well over 100 years, to pick up the tab because the city doesn't want to pay the bill? I feel as though that this is a responsibility of this city. You people took the property, or are taking the property, and even under the eminent domain, it states that you must give all of the people that you're taking, up to 10 people, the names and all of the properties, what you're acquiring. Now, you notified 9 of us that you're taking some of the property, but one of them you left out, and that's property from the University of Wisconsin. Now, why? It's in the state statutes. I think that maybe the people should put the people that are running this show on notice that you have to take and abide by the same thing as anybody else, by the statutes. Now, I am not, this amount that they're offering is a split between a guy that came in here from Milwaukee. They couldn't hire anybody from Oshkosh. Okay, I'll be out here in a second.
Because we don't want to negotiate it here.
Okay, and the split is between what we hired a local appraiser that does appraisals all over the country. His appraisal is more than twice what the city's appraisal is. Of course, they hired a guy from Green Bay that hired a guy from Milwaukee that couldn't find any properties in the city of Oshkosh. He couldn't find a comp in the city of Oshkosh. He went to Amru in Winnie County, and not to Oshkosh, because you see, Oshkosh doesn't want any to give business to any local people. I thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
You got any questions?
Do you have any questions? Okay, thank you. This has been an ongoing negotiation out there, which the council has been involved in over time. And this was the tentative agreement, I believe, that was decided upon by both sides.
Yeah, this is the agreement.
And he has actually signed it now.
Okay, and it's been signed. Okay, a motion and a second on Resolution 13-576.
So moved.
Second. Discussion.
What is the value of the property that we have assessed for the purposes of billing taxes previous to the negotiations that have taken place? Do we know that? And
I don't have that information for you this evening.
Okay, any other comments? Again, comment, this has been an ongoing negotiation. The lawyers for both sides, everybody's been in the room for several months, so this was the outcome of that negotiation. Okay, I'll ask clerk to take the roll call vote on Resolution 13-576.
Herman.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Heck.
Aye.
Tower.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Okay, that takes us to new resolutions. Resolution 13-577, approve pay for performance payment for 2013 to city manager. Anybody like to speak to that? Okay, I'll bring it back to council for a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, okay, it's been moved and second. Discussion. Mr. Herman, you'd like to comment on that?
Thank you, Mayor.
I will say, Mr. Herman basically takes the lead in the performance evaluation of the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. As the mayor said, the responsibility of the deputy mayor, one of the roles of the deputy mayor is to lead the council into the evaluation and performance of the city manager. As we've done the last couple of years, we've put together a pay for performance measure, some goals for the city manager, and there were 5 of them this year, and I'll just briefly highlight them real quickly. It's in the council packets and online. But the first goal was to identify stakeholders to establish a public-private partnership for economic development for the city, develop and recommend a plan to finance long-term health neighborhoods program, which we have with NeighborWorks and some other programs, coordinate a plan that facilitates the traffic flow between the city of from Highway 41 into the central city, develop and present and implement a plan and budget for pay for performance, which was talked about tonight by Mr. Fitzpatrick and stuff, and work with the council to develop a new budget process by April 30th. Those 5 goals, council laid out that Mr. Roloff would be able to accomplish up to a maximum $5,000, a one-time payment, and the council approved a $4,000 pay for performance for Mr. Roloff that will be paid to him prior to the end of 2013. So council feels that some of these goals are still a work in progress and that they'll be continuing to be something that Mr. Roloff and his staff will be working on in the 2014 and beyond, because some of these goals are kind of continuing type goals where we want to continue to improve the certain things that aren't traditionally out there as something that is a day-to-day performance for the city manager to work on. And so council, and for 2014, we've not come to an agreement. Well, I shouldn't say agreement, discussions yet. So we don't have a formal set of goals for 2014, but for 2013, we've made a decision on that. So.
Okay, any other comments by council members on this? The council did spend considerable discussion on this, going through the goals, going through asking Mr. Roloff for his identification of what he thought was his performance level, and the council evaluated it, and that was the outcome of the discussion. Okay, I have the clerk take the roll call vote on Resolution 13-577.
Herman.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Peck.
Aye.
Tower.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Okay, it takes us to Resolution 13-578, approve city manager performance evaluation for 2013 and 2014 compensation. Anybody like to come forward to speak to that? Seeing no one come forward, I'll bring it back to the council for a motion and a second of Resolution 13-578.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Again, I will ask Deputy Mayor Herman for some discussion regarding this.
All right. Again, as I stated, the council's only employee is actually the city manager. We have no control over any other employees per se in the city of Oshkosh other than the city manager. City manager is our employee, and the evaluation performance is really a model that takes into account the various job dimensions of the role of the city manager. It's an assessment of the city manager's performance, but not only the city manager, but the city council also. It's important for us to make sure that we're in tune with the city manager and vice versa. When we make policies and when we have discussion for the city manager, I think it's important that we're all on the same page as much as possible and work forward for the betterment of the city of Oshkosh, for the betterment of the city manager, and for all the employees and the citizens of Oshkosh. So the evaluation process is taken very seriously. This year we modified some of the questions. Working with council members, working with Mr. Roloff, we tried to kind of focus in a little bit more on just what is his job and what his performance is. And I'm pleased to announce that council came up with a consensus that Mr. Roloff is doing an excellent job. He's a cheerleader for the city of Oshkosh. He's moved projects forward. He's taken on tough roles, tough assignments. And the council is pleased to announce that we are extending an offer to have Mr. Roloff continue to lead the city of Oshkosh through 2014 and hopefully beyond. With that, there was quite a bit of discussion to where we are at with compensation and salary, which is always an important piece. We did not really make a decision or make any changes to his base compensation package, other than we did make an adjustment in his salary, and his 2014 salary will be $134,000.
Actually, that was an adjustment to base.
It was an adjustment to his base.
We did make an adjustment to base.
Yes, we did make an adjustment from base from 127.5 to 134. Consensus of the council was, we looked at several factors with the help of Mr. Fitzpatrick. We did a little bit of an analysis of where city managers are throughout the Midwest, and we felt that was important for the job that Mr. Roloff has been doing for the city of Oshkosh. He's only received one pay increase since he's been the city manager, other than his pay for performance, which is not based on the bottom of his salary. It's the compensation one-time check. So council feels that to retain a manager of Mr. Roloff's stature, well known in the state, federal levels of government, we need to be competitive, and council felt that this was appropriate to compensate him with that. So with that.
Any other comments? Seeing none again, I would just make the comment. The city manager doesn't progress through a series of steps like other employees with kind of the automatic increases and things like that, and has only had actually one increase.
Mm-hmm.
So he operates in a very different system. So it was appropriate.
Yes, very much so.
Okay, I'll ask the clerk to take the roll call vote on Resolution 13-578.
Herman.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Peck.
Aye.
Tower.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Okay, I'd also want to compliment Deputy Mayor Herman for a job very well done. This evaluation got done earlier than we've gotten it done in the past. I think it was thorough, and he worked with the council to achieve some consensus on a number of things. This material will be made available publicly. It's already out there publicly, actually. I'm sure Mr. Bolier will have some sort of an argument regarding this at some point in time with a not too distant future, so it'll be even more public, so. Okay, council discussion, direction of city manager and future agenda items. Future agenda items workshop on special events, January 14 at 4:45. Okay, we're all.
Staff's working on a presentation with Wendy Hillsberg from the Convention Bureau, as well as internal staff.
Okay. The second thing is a joint workshop with the Common Council, Plan Commission, Redevelopment Authority, a vision of riverfront development on January 28th at 4:45. I assume staff will work on that to some degree?
Yes.
So, Mr. Cummings, let's get involved in that.
Very much so.
In the agenda setting for that. You may want to, because you're the one that sort of pushed that, so which I appreciate, so. All right, citizen statements to the council. That's another opportunity for citizens to comment on aspects of the community. I do ask a number of things. If you'd like to comment on general, microphone's open. Come up, give us your name and address. Limit your comments to no more than 5 minutes. Speak directly to the council. No electioneering. And please don't address any items that have already been discussed on the agenda.
My name is Patricia Diener. I live at 1316 Broad. I was listening to John on Channel 10, and he was talking about some information that was coming up in regard to snow, how people need to keep their sidewalks cleaned up for handicapped people, people walking. The problem is when the snow falls on the weekend, some people feel they don't have to get out. And then it can go to the second snow, and then to the third. And I want to thank Wisconsin Public Service. I appreciate what they've done. They're going around the city removing power line poles. Some are a very bad hazard, safety hazard. It took 2 years, but they're out moving some that are really bad and old, and I do appreciate what they've done.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else like to come forward? Seeing no one come forward, we'll move to the city manager, announcements and statements. Mr. Roloff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank the council for their vote of support. Appreciate that and look forward to continue working with you. With that, we got some other things going on. Our auto mailer, which is in the room next door, has started to see better days, and so we needed to get that replaced, and so we have some funds in the utility funds to pay for a replacement auto mailer. Basically folds the inserts with the utility bills that go out there. So we've replaced that. We got that through a bid process with the state, the cooperative purchase. Secondly, for planning for our 2014 capital improvements, we have a contract with AECom in the amount of $50,000 for general design and construction-related services associated with our capital improvement program for next year. And then the last thing you have in your agenda packet is just a summary, which is called a bond or note order for the recent issues that we had. The council had approved a parameters resolution for each of these issues, and the rates that are shown on the attachments, and I'm going to be using the true interest cost for the general obligation, general purpose bonds, true interest rate. These are bonds, so they're a little longer term, so the rate's a little bit higher, 3.593%. The general obligation promissory notes, 10-year term, so a little lesser, 2.319%. And then the sewer bonds were 3.65%, and the water system bonds were 3.467%. So still competitive rates. You'd see just a little uptick in the rates. I think that's a reflection of the market, not necessarily where our bond issues are. You know, we've maintained our bond rating, but Moody's is taking a look at us, and so that's something we'll have to keep an eye on. But I think the market is still very favorable, and we're taking advantage of those rates. And happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions? Anybody? I see none. Bring us towards the end before we adjourn. I do want to note that we will not be meeting in 2 weeks. That's Christmas Eve, so we won't meet till after the first of the year. So I want to extend to the other council members, to staff, and to the city residents a wish for a happy and joyous holiday out there, in whatever way you happen to celebrate it out there, and also a great New Year. As I indicated when I turned the lights on the tree also, I think it's important to recognize, while this can be a very joyous time of the year, for a lot of people, it can be a very difficult time of the year, too. So I hope that in our city, as we think about the holidays, we'll not only give thanks for the blessings we have and how fortunate we are, but also recognize there are some folks out there that are having a difficult time. And so I think it's important to reach out, particularly at this time, because it can be particularly difficult for those folks. So if you have an opportunity, put some money in the kettle, provide some food or some donations to various food pantries out there. If somebody down the street happens to not have somewhere to go for Christmas, invite them to come to your table and share some food with you. There are a lot of other worthwhile things that are going on. So while I do wish everybody a happy holiday, I hope we will give thoughts to those who are not quite as fortunate, and as a great city, we'll extend out to those folks at the same time. So I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. So we'll see you in the new year.